We're just a couple of days away from the first practice sessions of this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix, and as is customary, all the teams are bringing major upgrade packages to each of their cars for the event. Now, we have a lot of information to go over regarding each of the teams, but what you can see right now on the screen is a highlighted list of what each of the teams are bringing for their cars and what they're trying to achieve. Now, of course, as we all know, Friday is going to be extremely busy for all of the teams, so don't expect to get a clear picture and a clear read on where each of the teams stands. But there is one thing we can say with certainty. This event always has the potential to change the pecking order of a Formula One season, and with some of the upgrades that I've seen are in the pipeline for these teams on this event, that is very much the case. So without further ado, let's jump into each of the respective teams and discuss their potential upgrades and what this will help achieve with each of their cars. And to start with, we're going to go over Ferrari's Formula One upgrades for the Spanish Grand Prix, as we have a lot of information from the Formula Uno team over on their website. Now, we know for certain a lot of major changes are happening to the rear end of the car in tandem with a brand new floor for the SF24. There's going to be also some rear bodywork changes as well as deflector elements in and around the diffuser, which will be undergoing changes. Now, the overall goal of this package is simple. It's to increase the overall aerodynamic load produced by the car through downforce, and of course increase the load points throughout all of the corners. And second to that, it's also supposedly going to somewhat help with their warm-up issues when it comes to qualifying performance for the team. So, as we know from the beginning of the season, not much has changed on the SF24 at the rear end, and that also is true of the floor. So this event should see quite a switch up in terms of how the floor is visually looking for us, but also how it's potentially interacting with the diffuser, because I feel there's going to be a lot of changes with the flow structures on the underneath of the floor, which of course we do not know really what those structures are currently looking like. And of course, as we all know, a floor is extremely important for a Formula One car of this generation. It's what produces the most downforce and what basically governs how quick a ground effect era car is. There are a few other really important areas that also need to be interacting with a floor, and of course that's the opening to that floor through the Venturi tunnels and of course the front wing. And this is all about the balance act of making sure the balance on their Formula One car is in a optimum window for each of the drivers through their setup that they feel comfortable in. So any and all changes in and around those particular areas are always going to be with the intention of helping achieve a cleaner airflow through the whole of the Formula One car, and in this case the SF24. Now I've got a really interesting shot on screen here of the rear end of the SF24 in its current guise before the upgrades, and you can see just how intricate the details are in and around the diffuser area. I expect to see changes in and around this area as well, as I mentioned at the start of this video with this particular Formula One outfit. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But one thing we can say for certain, this event, if the weather is how it's expected to be, the team will not have any warm-up issues, and we will get a full read on just where this car stands against the competitors such as McLaren and, importantly, Red Bull. Now, speaking of Red Bull, let's move on to them. And they too are bringing a new floor as well as some rear body changes. Now, again, up until this point in the season, Red Bull haven't necessarily bought a huge major upgrade package, but this is the weekend and the race in which they should. Now, in terms of the size and scope, we could say it's akin to the Imola upgrade that Ferrari bought, which was 25% of their overall budget for the season, and I expect a similar amount of allocation given to this upgrade for the Red Bull team and their RB20. Now, not a huge amount has been put out in the press in terms of what the changes are going to be other than the floor that I could find. Maybe you guys have seen other information out there regarding their upgrades, but I couldn't find it. But I expect them to focus in on the floor, as they've stated they will be doing. And also, Helmut Marko also says he's not too worried about all the other Formula 1 teams and their upgrades because he knows what's in the pipeline. And I think that's very true, because if we look on past races around this circuit, the team has been very, very dominant. Last year, very dominant. And I expect them to be extremely quick around this circuit, particularly so given the layout of it. The RP20 in medium high speed corners is exceptional. There's also going to be rear bodywork changes in tandem with that new floor, but again, we don't know what they are. And kind of the same can be said for Mercedes. They too are bringing a brand new floor to the event, even though they already introduced a brand new floor a couple of events ago, last time out in Miami, which was a complete departure from the original spec floor that they had. Now it's going to be interesting to see whether the changes are visible on the car or whether this is all on the underside of the floor. And that's obviously where the important parts are. It's where the flows and the structures you're trying to create and produce downforce from and guide them all the way to the back end of the car and to the diffuser. So again, it's a case of Mercedes, now that they've got on top of their correlation issues, all these upgrades are about adding performance, adding downforce, adding load, making sure the balance stays in place. And I expect them to continue doing that. Away from them, we have McLaren and Aston Martin, and a lot is left in mystery regarding these teams. We don't know exactly what they're bringing to this track and to this race, but we do know for certain that they are. Now, what I can say is it's not going to be a huge major upgrade like all the other teams that are going to be spoken about later in this video. For McLaren, they've changed their philosophy in terms of how they upgrade their latest Formula 1 car, the MCL38. Instead of having huge upgrades come at certain key points in the season according to their upgrade schedule, whenever they get a new part that's going to bring even half a tenth or a tenth of performance, they're going to be putting it on the car. And that's what's going to be the case starting this race weekend. So it could be as simple as a front wing change, a rear ring change, a bit of different pickups on the side pods or whatnot, or on the floor edge. So it's not going to be a major upgrade, so don't expect something world changing for that particular team. And I think the same can be said for Aston Martin. Again, we're not really sure whether they're bringing any substantial upgrades to the AMR 24, but they should be bringing something because it's a home Grand Prix for their number one driver, Fernando Alonso. Now, interestingly, we get to what I think could potentially be the dark horse of the weekend, and also the team that is bringing the most upgrades to their car, and that is the Racing Bull team with Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. Now they're bringing a massive upgrade, as I just stated. They're bringing a brand new floor, new rear bodywork, new side pods, new rear rings, and this should bring a reasonable gain in terms of lap time. They're looking between 2.5 to 3 tenths according to the information that we've been given. And this again comes from Formula Uno. So they, in their fight to overtake Aston Martin in 5th place this season, could potentially be hotting up a lot this particular weekend. And again, with their package, they're very strong around these sorts of high speed circuits. So I think they're going to have a really fantastic weekend. Moving away from them, and with some of the other teams such as Haas and what the hell do we even call them? The outfit with Bottas and Zhou. They're bringing a brand new rear ring for the event, and Haas have upgrades. I don't really know what they are, and to be honest, I'm not too worried about what they are. I don't really care. So yeah, there it is. But yeah, how do I think this weekend is going to pan out in terms of a pecking order? Well, that's an interesting point. I think it's going to be pretty much a status quo of Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari. You could maybe swap Ferrari and McLaren depending on how their weekend goes. Mercedes will be there or thereabouts as well. And then we have a gap between them and Aston Martin and the Racing Bulls team, and then another gap to all the rest of the field. And I think, depending on how each of the team's upgrades work, whether they can get it into the right setup window for their drivers, we could see maybe a few potential shocks on the cars. But I think, from what I've seen, heard and read, and the type of circuit we're at, I really do expect to see a Red Bull dominated weekend where they take pole position, race victory, fastest lap. And if Sergio Perez can get his ass into gear and make a qualifying session which is respectable for the team, let alone himself, he should be within the top 3 to 5 places in the grid. If he doesn't, he's going to be clobbered up like the Ferrari duo, the McLaren and Mercedes duo. He could be out of the top 8, I think, if he doesn't put a good weekend together, because the gaps are not going to be massive. Right guys, that's the video. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment down below anything, and I'll catch you in another video later.